Hi, it's me, Progressive's number 1, number 2 employee. Leave a message at the... Hey, Jamie. It's me, Jamie. This is your daily pep talk. I know it's been rough going ever since people found out about your a cappella group, Mad Harmony, but you will bounce back. I mean, you're the guy always helping people find coverage options with the Name Your Price tool. It should be you giving me the pep talk. Now get out there, hit that high note, and take Mad Harmony all the way to nationals this year! Sorry, it's pitchy.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
You're listening to Jet Nation Radio, the official podcast of JetNation.com, the largest independent fan site in the NFL. Be sure to check out our forums and talk all things Jets with thousands of other die-hard Jets fans. Now, to get you up to date on all the latest Jets news, notes, and quotes, here's your host, Glenn Naughton.
Good evening, Jets fans. How are we doing today? I am Glenn Naughton. This is Jet Nation Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight we're going to take some time. We got as we know, the Super Bowl this weekend. I can imagine not everyone will be tuning in. You've got perennial winners that were there seemingly, and a team who just got to where they are a couple seasons ago. The fans in LA don't even at least I know a couple of years ago when the Rams moved back to LA, not a great deal of enthusiasm other than the handful of folks who were coming out for games. I think I talked about this at the time. It was really shocking. I guess it shouldn't be shocking. It's the reason why LA's had such a hard time supporting teams. Ross Tucker from Sirius XM NFL Radio talked about being out there for the Rams season opener after being away for, 20-some years. Said he asked about 15 different people in different industries, everyone he came into contact with, barbers, cab drivers, waiters, waitresses, asked them all who the Rams are playing that weekend, and not one person knew the answer. Some people didn't even realize the Rams were a thing in L.A. So you've got a disinterested fan base versus a largely bandwagon fan base. Squaring off again, I would expect the ratings for this one will not be as good as some other matchups would have been. But either way, it's here. When it is gone, we will be roughly 6 weeks away from free agency, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, because that is going to be the first chance the Jets really have to significantly, drastically improve their roster. It's going to be on General Manager Mike Maccagnan and his $100 million that he is going to have. And it promises to be fast and furious, and there are some big names out there. There are some small names out there. We'll go over some of that. Some decisions to make with Spencer Long, center/left guard, who had an up and down year last year, due to make $6.5 million. Jets have in a few weeks. The Jets will have a decision to make on him. They can either cut him and avoid any cap hit at all, save the full $6.5 million, or in the first week of February, he's got a $2.5 million bonus, or $2.5 million of his salary is due, roster bonus. So they would not get it back down the road. I wouldn't be shocked if he's let go, but in all honesty, with the amount of money they have, the amount of holes they have, I would say, and the fact that he played all right at left guard last year, I'd say bring the guy back for an audition. I mean, $6.5 million is a lot for a backup, but even if he ends up being a backup center left guard, that's not the worst thing in the world, because you need some depth in this league. We've talked about that. It's a weird thing. This offensive line needs to be upgraded dramatically, but in terms of depth, the backup guys, they've all been tested enough that they're fine backups. You know, as I said last week, the Brent Quales, Dakota Dozers of the world, you know, these aren't world beaters, but you're generally not going to get that with your backup O-lineman, as evidenced by the fact that the Jets O-line, as bad as it was, to the human eye, to the naked eye, statistically was, you know, middle of the pack line in terms of protecting the quarterback. And yeah, I mean, even I'm tired of saying that, but that's just making the point that the guys they have backing up in the trenches are guys they could live with. And if you added Spencer Long to that mix, and you know, you're doing all right if somebody goes down, if a starter goes down. But that's where, you know, it becomes key, is adding starters, adding quality players. So we're going to touch on free agency. Throw out a worth mentioning. Might even let's get to those off the top here. But first, before I go any further, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Miles Social. Miles Social. They want to handle all of your internet or all of your social media and internet needs. Miles Social helps businesses with social media, websites, and SEOs. Check them out at milesocial.com, milesocial.com. So yeah, we'll run through the list of free agents and go through these couple of notes. Won't make any big waves in the immediate future, but a couple signings that jumped out at me. I was taking a look at the future reserve guys the other day, and what really one in particular who jumped out at me that I was surprised was, by the Cowboys this past offseason, or this after the 2017 season, and I thought he'd been picked up elsewhere, but he hadn't been. Charles Tapper. Charles Tapper is a guy worth keeping an eye on. He's been in the league for a couple years, and he's been hurt. And I know that there's, the very few guys who get hurt that often. It's not very often they'll bounce back and have, long, productive careers. But at the same time, guys are worth taking a risk on, because if they can get their act together and they can stay healthy, they can be productive. And Charles Tapper's a guy he checks in at 6'3", 270. He's got some versatility along that defensive line. You look at the number of fronts Greg Williams likes to run. Charles Tapper's a guy who can play a little bit inside, a little bit outside. Again, at 6'3", 270, he ran a combine best 4.59 for D lineman a few years ago in Indy when he was there, and only played a couple games this year, or in 2017, the last time he was on the field. Only played a couple games with the Cowboys, handful of snaps. I want to say 32, 33 snaps, but got himself a sack, couple quarterback pressures, and again, explosive guy. Played at Oklahoma where he looked really, really good. There's some questions about his ability to bend, his pad level, things like that. Some coachable things that needed some work, but just his overall skill set makes him a guy who was, obviously down pick. He went in the fourth, but just the number of injuries caught up with him, and Dallas had enough depth on that D line that they let him go. But as I said, I thought he'd been picked up elsewhere. And then when I took a look the other day, just kind of glancing through the roster, I saw his name, and I guess the team they signed him and Tavon Campbell, a corner out of the CFL, 20, blazing speed from what I was able to find. He's 6'1", 195. Report he ran some sub 4.4 40s. We'll see how that translates. I mean, we've seen plenty of times before where guys run these great 40 times and they just don't look anywhere near as fast in pads on the field. And yesterday, day before, sometime in the last 48 hours, the Jets added corner Arthur Mollett, which is that I don't know much about him. I haven't watched film on him. They just got him in the last day or two. He hasn't played a ton. One thing that stuff, he ran like a 4.8 or 4.9 or something insanely high. No, yeah, nearly a 4.7. He ran a 4.68, I believe, which for a corner, that's a slow safety. So we'll see. I mean, supposedly scouting reports say some quickness, maybe some potential as a nickel, but my goodness, corner running nearly in the 4.7s, not at the top of my list. And again, understanding straight line speed isn't everything. There can't be a whole lot of guys in the league who ran that slow playing corner. So again, that's just a couple things that jumped out at me looking at the roster, guys worth looking at, who I'd like to see more of. I'll be trying to pull up some film or some college games for these guys and see how they looked, because a lot of these guys on the practice squad and future reserve deals haven't had a ton of reps in the pros. So moving on to free agency, I was gonna and kind of write down my favorite names, but I think what we'll do is I'm gonna go through. I pulled up a couple top 20, top 50 free agent lists. Found one that I liked on PFF, Pro Football Focus. So we're gonna go through that one. We're gonna go through the PFF list of free agents, talk about whether it's a player the Jets should pursue, how realistic it is they hit the market, and of course Le'Veon Bell is not on here, as he is not a free agent yet. But we will start with Le'Veon Bell. Well, nobody's a free agent yet, but Le'Veon Bell isn't. Let's see. Oh no, they did put him on. They had him much lower than I thought. I thought he'd be a top 5 guy. So I take that back. I figured they left him off because his situation wasn't settled in Pittsburgh, but they do have him on here. Okay. So starting at the top then. Edge rusher DeMarcus Lawrence, who we talked about a little bit on here. A lot of people have speculated about whether or not he will hit free agency. He's one of those guys that, based on his talent, your expectation would be there's no way he hits free agency. And if he hits free agency, should the Jets pursue him? Absolutely. Absolutely. You back up the truck for this guy. Why is there a chance he'll hit free agency? Well, the Cowboys, much like the Jets, don't have a ton of guys under contract going into next year. Their number is pretty low. I forget exactly what it is, but they got some holes to fill. And they have Dak Prescott wants a deal. And the Cowboys is reportedly negotiating with him. They started negotiating with him late in the season. He's going to be in the $20 million a year range. They gave up a first-round pick to get Amari Cooper. They're going to want him re-signed. He's going to be a $20 million. Well, even if we say $16 million a year range. Report today saying that Ezekiel Elliott may hold out if he doesn't get a new deal. He's going to want $16, $17 million. Okay, see where I'm going with this? You can't have. I can't remember what they have a. One of their corners is due to hit free agency, not this year but next. And they're saying that'll be another $17, $18 million a year deal. You throw DeMarcus Lawrence in there. That's 6 guys that they're going to have to pay. I mean, let's say you're looking minimum $16, $17 million a year. 6 guys. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, but wow. I mean, you're talking about allocating $130, $140 million to 6 guys, and you got probably another 20-some roster spots to fill. And that's in addition to who you have on your roster now. So the Cowboys are going to have to get really creative, or the Cowboys are going to have to let somebody walk. Now, will it be Lawrence? I doubt it. But it does make it an interesting situation, because there are times we see these, and there's some guys on the list like this that we'll talk about. Insanely talented guys where a team isn't an ideal cap situation, but you're like, well, they can make 1 or 2 moves and they'll fit him. They'll make him work. I don't know if you can. I don't know how much easier it is to say, oh, really? They have to sign 5 or 6 guys for nearly $20 million a year? Yeah, they'll work that out. They might. but let's not fool ourselves and say that's going to be an easy one. It's easy to free up $8 or $9 million on your roster. Easy to fill up 120 with 20 or 30 holes or empty roster spots. I would say that is significantly less easy than making room for one or two guys. So we'll see where it goes. But if DeMarcus Lawrence hits free agency, you absolutely go get that guy. I mean, could you imagine how much better that guy in one day makes your roster? We hear it all the time, and rightfully so. This team has not had an elite pass rusher since the days of John Abraham. And Lawrence would immediately fix that. He would join Greg Williams as 4-3. These guys had double-digit sacks, each of 14.5 2 years ago. Had 10.5 this year. Of course, there's always the concern that is, what happens once the guy gets his deal? What happens when he gets his money? What happens once he gets paid? Listen, I understand that. And I also understand, you got to build through the draft. You got to build through the draft. Build through the draft is the way to go. You can't win. You can't win with free agents. Remember at the start of the show when we talked about who's in the Super Bowl this year? The Rams. Both their starting corners acquired this offseason. And Ndamukong Suh acquired this offseason. Brandon Cooks acquired this offseason. I mean, they added 4, 5, 6 big-name players through trades and free agency that people said, that vaulted them, honestly. I mean, I know I wasn't the only one saying it, that those moves made them a Super Bowl contender. Going out and getting Aqib Talib and Ndamukong Suh, Peterson. I mean, they added some damn good talent. And now they're in the Super Bowl. So, there's more than one way to build a roster. Would you love to stack your roster with cheap, affordable draft picks who can contribute at a high level early on at a low price? Of course you would. And that's hopefully what the Jets are going to be doing. However, that doesn't mean that, you can never go out and sign some free agents. You're not going to succeed if you go get free agents. So, yeah, the concern with Lawrence, 2 big seasons, but the good thing about Lawrence, and just, you say, look, some guys take a few years to come to their own. But he's coming off back-to-back double-digit sack seasons and would immediately upgrade the defense. So DeMarcus Lawrence, absolutely. Number 2 on their list, Earl Thomas. And by the way, if you're not a subscriber to Pro Football Focus, I recommend it. They're not a sponsor. They're not paying me to say that. I have it. It's not cheap, but it's worth it if you're a fan. I'm not going to share grades here because that's not, that's a violation of their user terms. So I'm not going to give out grades. Thomas is their number 2. Obviously not a need there. Good player, but not a need. Trey Flowers, edge defender from the Patriots. I'll tell you what, I'd take Trey Flowers in a heartbeat. Because again, let's say hypothetically, let's say DeMarcus Lawrence, the Cowboys find a way to keep him. It won't be easy, but let's say they do. Trey Flowers, I honestly don't see the Patriots letting him go either. And this is with edge rushers is the good ones rarely hit free agency. So Trey Flowers, I would take him in a heartbeat. Really good player, has been fantastic this postseason. But I don't see Bill Belichick letting him go. But that brings us to the next guy, because this is a guy that I think will hit free agency and is good enough. Quarterback. And really, the guy you can probably get for a couple years, 3-year deal maybe. He's 31 years old, but still playing at a high level. That's Eagles defensive end. Saw a little bit of a drop-off this year in sack production, but and maybe a little bit biased toward Graham. As I've mentioned before, spent some time in Philly before moving back to the UK. And That guy, even though the sack numbers aren't always there, the guy just always seems to be affecting a play. You know, QB pressures, QB hits. You know, as we say, and everyone says, it's not always about the sacks. You know, if you then you're doing all right. And Brandon Graham's the guy who does that. Yeah, 10.5 a couple of years ago, but we saw that dip to 4 this year. So, but the 2 seasons prior to that, he had 6.5 and 5.5. So he hasn't been a consistent he's never been actually a double-digit sack guy. But just a disruptive player who doesn't get enough credit. He does a nice job. Next player, Grady Jarrett, D lineman. Wouldn't, you know, with the Jets transition to a 4-3, maybe you go after a Grady Jarrett. He can be a disruptive guy. But again, a lot of this is going to depend on, I mean, obviously what the Jets do in free agency will impact the draft. But with so many good D linemen available, and if the Jets are able to trade down, I mean, hell, even then they should be targeting left tackle or edge rusher. But DT is unlikely. So Grady Jarrett, if they feel like he's a guy, with him, with most of these guys, it's going to come down to money. As good as he is, as disruptive as he can be from the inside, I think this one comes down to, you know, the Jets sitting down with Greg Williams, much like I said with the Leonard Williams situation. You know, get his input. And, you know, Greg Williams has been coaching for a million years. And you just ask him, what do you think you can get out of this guy? How much of a difference can this guy make on your defense? And you go from there. That's your number 5 player, Grady Jarrett. Number 6, wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, Jadeveon Clowney. Immensely talented player who the guy has been hurt too often for the money he's going to want. He might go somewhere and get 20 sacks. You cannot deny the guy's talent when he's playing at his best. But when you have a guy who's injured as often as he is, and the money he's going to want, I can't see it. I don't see being willing to put up the type of money it's going to take to secure. And again, never had 10 sacks. He had 9 sacks this year, 9.5 the year before. There's a good chance that for the next many years he will be a double-digit sack guy. But it's just as likely, if not more so, that he'll spend the next several years playing hurt or missing time because he's injured. Because he's done a lot of that throughout his career. So he's a guy. Although, I will say, to be fair, like I said, he's played hurt a little bit, so he could have been more productive. But he's been, for the most part, he's been on the field the last few years, you know. 2014, 2015 were a bit of a disaster. But 2016, 17, and 18, he's missed a combined 4 starts. Missed 2 this year and 2 in 2016, according to Pro Football Reference, not Pro Football Focus. So, but those early injuries scare me a bit. They really do. He's the type of guy I'd love to get. It won't happen. I'd love to see him on a 1 or 2, see how he does, and then see if you're going to commit to him long term. But Jadeveon Clowney, the money he'll be asking, and the injury history, I don't think the Jets can afford to do that. Would I hate it if they signed him? No. You know, I guess the optimist in me would just look at the upside. But there'd be a part of me that'd be worrying quite a bit about the injuries. Landon Collins is next on the list, Giant safety. He is not man big money, so that's a no. Frank Clark, edge defender for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Clark's an interesting one because he's another edge guy, and he may make it to free agency, surprisingly, just because of his youth. You know, he's 26, 27 years old. Former second-round pick who had 13 sacks this year, and I've seen a couple people say that they think he hits free agency. I honestly, because why would you let that guy hit free agency? We will see if Pete Carroll and company decide to do that. I'm not even sure. I'll see if I can take a look and see what the Seattle Seahawks salary cap situation is like, because really, unless you're pressed up against the cap and you're absolutely, you have a ton of holes to fill next year, then I don't see why you can't get him done. Yeah, according to our friends at overthecap.com, Seahawks have $54 million in cap space next year, which, to be honest, isn't a ton. Because, actually looking at it, I'm not going to go with the exact number, but it doesn't look like it does look like they have quite a few gaps on their roster. Because again, keep in mind when you're looking at the rosters as they currently stand, you're looking at 10 practice squad guys and maybe some futures guys who don't have realistic chance to make the roster. I mean, they have a ton of guys that make really small money. Yeah, so they have some back end of the roster guys. So again, can they afford to go after a guy like Clark who will command big money if they've got that many holes to fill? We shall see. And next on the list, Dee Ford, another edge rusher who I'm sure Jets fans would love to have. However, although there were some rumors that Dee Ford would not get franchise tagged by the Kansas City Chiefs, that would be rather surprising if that didn't happen. I think we will see Ford get tagged. I think they saw how valuable he was to them, and that playoff loss, he didn't play well, he didn't do much, but still too good of a player to let hit free agency, too young at a critical position. I don't see that happening. Next up, he's been a good player, but he's much like Clowney, he's battled injuries, so he would worry me. I think he's missed a little bit of time in a few different seasons at this point, and you have to ask yourself, how much are you willing to pay for a guy who's missed a bunch of games, and he missed 7 games last year, missed 9 games the year before that. So those are big chunks of time. But he's a good, his first 2 seasons in the pros, 15 and 14 starts, so didn't really miss much time. And that was with the Buffalo Bills, of course. And then he went to the Eagles, where he got dinged up a couple times. All in all, good player. And again, you can count him as one of those guys that it's not that you wouldn't want to see him, but you'd be worried about the injury history. Adrian Amos is PFF's next free agent. Without mentioning grades, he's number 11 safety, another player the Jets, just unless they're going for a low level, another low level safety as a depth guy or a guy who you can use in multiple roles, but you're not going to get a guy like Amos in that spot. Next up, Le'Veon Bell. And I don't know how you don't make a run at it. There've been rumors saying he wanted to go to the Colts, and then people start to spend that kind of money on a running back. I saw something recently that he wants to go to Miami, and that may be the case, and if he does, that's fine. But I think given the cap space the Jets have and the amount of money that Le'Veon Bell just lost in free agency, or not in free agency, but lost by not showing up to work last year, I think it's going to be all about the money for Le'Veon Bell. And I could be wrong. Maybe he's a different kind of guy. Maybe he really does just want to win, which if that were the case, why are you going to go to Miami? We don't even know who their quarterback is going to be. Maybe it is Le'Veon Bell. Maybe Le'Veon Bell does go somewhere like that, but I think he's going to chase the money, and I think the Jets are going to offer most, or they're going to outbid anybody else, and I think Le'Veon Bell's going to be a Jet. And I think, a guy, when you talk about a running back who might be the best running back in the NFL and can get you 60, 70, 80 catches, then that's just an absolute no-brainer. You have to go sign that guy. And I get the positional thing, you $16 million for a running back's too much. I get that. But the Jets have money to spend. And the number one objective is going to be protecting and developing Sam Darnold. And the best way to do that is to get him guys who can play at an elite level and Le'Veon Bell's ability to run and catch. And like I've said this before, I said it throughout the offseason, by Le'Veon Bell sitting out last year, that could be the best thing he's done because that could add years to his career. And I always use the example of Marcus Allen, who was really, for me as a fan, the first running back I saw who played at a level as high as Marcus Allen did late in his career. He was the first back that I saw who was sort of 30-31. You know, he's considered a dinosaur at that point in Kansas City, and he was playing really well. And got to the tense relationship he had in Oakland with Al Davis when he had a couple of seasons where they just sat him. He was healthy. He was ready to play. They didn't play him. Al Davis, you know, whatever the spite he had toward Marcus Allen, he sat the guy for a full season. And Marcus Allen said that he thinks that's why he was able to play as well as he was late into his career. So Le'Veon Bell's definite yes for me. 4-year deal, something along those lines, and get it done. Marcus Joyner, again, another safety. Well, really, we should just skip right over those guys because that couldn't and shouldn't be happening. Next up, this one's interesting because of some news that came out this week. And Ndamukong Suh, who I mentioned earlier, Rams defensive tackle. He's, there were reports last year that the Jets had made an offer. And Chris Johnson pulled the offer because it was taking too long. But Suh said, in his mind anyway, that it was close. And he thought there was a good chance he was going to be a Jet. And it just didn't work out. Well, now, he's only going to be a year older. It's not like he's looking back, and this is 4 years ago. One off season later, and he's going to be a free agent again. And he's a nasty dude. And Greg Williams, his defensive coordinator, is a nasty dude. And I wouldn't be one bit surprised if Greg Williams said to the Jets, yeah, get that guy. Get him on my D-line. And it may come down to money. How realistic is he going to be in his demands? And at this point in his career, a little bit overrated, maybe. Feel like he's been a very good player to the draft pick and salary that he's earned. So the fact that the Jets were interested last offseason and the fact he's a free agent this offseason makes you wonder if they'll get together and talk again, especially, with Suh saying publicly that he thought it might happen. That could be kind of just a heads up, as Ndamukong Suh sits there and looks at how much money the Jets have. And of course, him and he can't do anything, but if a reporter says, were you almost a Jet? He can say, yeah, I almost was, but I'm not. That's nothing stopping him from saying that, but that could be him shooting up a flare for the Jets. Like, hey, this guy's saying that he thought he was going to be here and he wanted to visit and it just didn't work out. So should we try to work it out this offseason if we're interested? So that'll bear watching. That was number 14. Matt Paradis, Denver Broncos. I'll tell you what, I don't see how Denver lets him get away. But if you can go get this guy to play center, that's one of the biggest signings of your offseason right there. It's not sexy because it doesn't touch the ball. Fans want guys who touch the ball. But let's be honest here. You need a center. And this guy's one of the best in the business. If you can go out and add one of the top players in the league in free agency, then you do it. And now the Broncos are a team that you could see not being able to afford him. There's been talk that they might shop Von Miller because the Broncos are sitting on, let's look, so $40 million in cap space, $41 million. That's not a whole lot. And two reasons why this could be good for the Jets. One, if they can't clear cap space, then they could be looking then Matt Paradis may be elsewhere. If they look to clear cap space, aside from trading Von Miller, one thing they can do is release Case Keenum, quarterback Case Keenum. Now, it would be a cap hit of $10 million, which is a big hit. But it would be a savings of $11 million, and they need savings. And doing that would mean that John Elway, once again, is in the market for a quarterback. Now, if you're the Jets, you want as many teams as possible to be in search of a quarterback. And the Broncos are picking at 10. And let's face it, Elway, if they do part ways with Case Keenum, I mean, I don't even know if desperate is the word. I don't know how many quarterbacks you get to miss on. I mean, this Jets fans still kill Mike Maccagnan because he missed with Petty and Hack. 2 guys. Elway's drafted what? He spent first-round picks on quarterbacks who were terrible. Paxton Lynch. Spent a ton of money on Case Keenum, who was not very good this season. I don't know how many quarterbacks he gets to go get, but he's a legend in Denver, so he may just be, he may be locked into that job no matter how good or bad the Broncos are. But that's 2 players, 2 big situations that will bear watching for the Jets is cap situation, and then the domino there is, do they let the quarterback go, Case Keenum, and then look to trade up to the top 3 or top 5, making the Jets a possible target for the Broncos and for the Jets to add some more picks. So after Paradis, you got Golden Tate, wide receiver. I wouldn't do it, personally. As I've said before, I like the Anderson, Enunwa, Herndon. I like that trio of targets. Yes, they do need Yes, they need someone who can show he can stay healthy. But I would prefer a lesser-known receiver or a draft pick and let that draft pick develop while you work with Quincy and Robbie and Herndon. And, who knows what Deontay Burnett may become. I think there are some other options there. Linebacker Jordan Hicks is their 17th, and I'll tell you what, he was a guy who looked phenomenal a few years ago in Philly. Had a great rookie year, looked like he was going to be a long-term guy. But now he's another guy who's battled injuries. A legitimate possibility. Darrell Williams, tackle. Now, here's a guy who has been he'll be the best offensive tackle on the market. I would imagine for a guy with his resume, he'll be looking for left tackle money. The Jets are probably, with what they have in Kelvin Beachum, I think Darrell Williams is unlikely. I think that's an unlikely move. I say it all the time. Beachum isn't great, but he's a solid enough player. But he's another guy. If the Jets cut him, if the Jets were to part ways with Kelvin Beachum, significant cap savings as well. The Jets have that situation with 3 of their linemen right now. Kelvin Beachum, hypothetically, you say you let him go, that's an $8 million savings. And only 1.5 in dead money. That's not a lot of dead money. And then Spencer Long and Brian Winters are identical. They could both be cut with no cap hit and a savings of $6.5 million. So, do I think it'll happen? Do I think we'll see Brandon or Kelvin? Don't. But I wouldn't, as I said earlier, I think the Jets could look to go left tackle in the draft. I think one thing I wouldn't rule out for sure would be the Jets moving down a few spots in the draft, grab Jonah Williams, and let Jonah Williams play left guard his rookie year with Beachum playing left tackle. And then you ease Jonah Williams into left tackle the following season. But we'll see. We'll see about that. Next on the list, number 19, a name some of you may have heard before. Now, if you want Sheldon Richardson back in New York, I mean, let's face it, he is one of the more disappointing players